What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Soccer Wise. David Goss and Tommy Scoops with you for another big episode to talk about all things Major League Soccer. We've got CONCACAF Champions Cup around the corner once again. It's a good time to be alive. And Tom, I did my weekend review, and I didn't touch as heavily maybe as I could have on the biggest moment in North American soccer, which was the fusion of you and Sir Minty in one space. It's the first time anyone's ever actually seen you guys in the same space. So first official proof that we know you're not the same person. And I could see the love in the eyes on all the photographs.
I don't even know where to start with that. You were not the only person that made that deduction to say, we're technically, this is the first time. And I was like, no, the first time that he and I were in the same room together, it wasn't a room, it was a field. That was before he was announced as the mascot, and I took a picture of him and said, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, more or less. So we have been in the same space together before, but I get it.
That was before existence, though. Doesn't totally count.
Minty is omnipresent, so
okay.
There is no before existence,
yeah, true,
and there is no post-existence.
There's no Big Bang situation here.
Yeah, but that was the stuff of dreams. I got a couple questions of, were you that happy on your wedding day? People were putting up the pictures of me and Minty. They were just pointing that out. So that was what that was like. And I got to the press box, and for those watching along on streaming, I got a handwritten note from Sir Minty with my initial tweet as the front of that. So I have a new most prized possession. Let me see
again. There's glare. Wow, that is a extremely handwritten. That is like full on message, not just so nice to see you.
From the very moment you laid eyes on me. That's the first one.
All right. Tom has found...
Is that too real? Is that too real for you?
It's not too real. I think it's more that it's worrying because obviously I don't know how much room you have in your heart, and therefore I worry about the space inside of it for others of us here at Soccer Wise.
Were you just trying to go into a Friday Night Lights? My heart is full, gentlemen.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
I'm talking about the movie.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't love the movie. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I've read the book. I read the book.
Oh, sick.
I've watched the movie. I've watched the TV show. Yeah, I know how to read time. So this is like quick humble brag on that one. And I think the movie's a little underwhelming at times. Doesn't mean I haven't seen it 500 times.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
So it's not perfect to me, like you and Sir Minty experiencing each other. That is the absolute perfection. We're going to talk about some of the undefeated teams left in Major League Soccer, or some of the perfect teams, left in Major League Soccer. It is a mistake I will make again, and there are more mistakes I will clean up as we get into this. We're going to talk about the scoreless teams left in MLS 2 weeks in, and then we, of course, are going to talk about CONCACAF Champions Cup. And we've got a massive week of games coming up. Leg one for now every team that's in it. All the teams that had that first round bye in the Galaxy and Columbus are now entering the competition. We get our first taste of MLS versus Liga MX in this whole thing, and we get some big time matchups, as well as potentially Messi on display against a Caribbean side from Jamaica that is going to be awesome to watch. Leg two is what we're really looking forward to there. They have moved that game from their home 3,000 person stadium to the Office that we all know very well from World Cup qualifying in Kingston, Jamaica, which holds 40,000. I guarantee you there will be millions who will say they were in the building that night if he does end up playing. It is going to be one of those legendary moments. But Tom, overall, Charlotte, you got there on Friday. You did a live show, I think, with our friends at Top Bin 90 who were kind enough to come on this show for our season preview. And then you went to the game. Overall, the weekend, how was the experience?
Oh, it was unbelievable. It's been a whirlwind just in general in my life, work life, personal life, everything else. So it was fitting that I went from CBS in the morning. So I was up at 4:30 a.m. that day, go to do CBS, go straight from CBS to the airport. I had about 30 minutes at my hotel room before my good pal, Eric Krakauer, the legend, picked me up. And then we were at the Mint City Collective event. Everybody there was brilliant. They were so nice, so much fun. It was a really, really great vibe. They had all of their banners and all of their passion. They even welcomed some Atlanta United fans, so that I thought was pretty cool. It was some playful banter, but that was all good. And yeah, got to do the show with Top Bin 90. Those guys are great. That was a lot of fun. Again, I can't tell you over that 4 hour, 3 hour, whatever it was, that also felt like a whirlwind. It absolutely flew by. I had so much fun.
We were lucky enough to have Jorge on this show to do that preview, and he had said like Charlotte loves a little soccer wise. Did you feel the love all weekend?
Oh my God, I felt the love all weekend. Absolutely. I was taking pictures, talking to people, listening to their fan stories, everything else. It was, again, 10 out of 10 experience for me. I was very excited. And the good news is I think Charlotte is going to be very good this season. And as you know, dear listener of the show, I've been saying this before my trip to Charlotte, so this isn't anything that I was influenced on.
This is not a Weeby March situation.
Because I think that they're going to be among the very best teams in the Eastern Conference and probably MLS this year, I might have another excuse to go back down to Charlotte. There's going to be more games of consequences as the season goes on. So I'm excited about that, personally and selfishly.
This is one of the worst conversations for two people from the tri-state area to have, but did you get a feel for the Charlotte versus Atlanta? I'm just going to do the MLS cliche thing and call it a rivalry that could be brewing. I think that was a large reason for you of going down was the matchup, obviously the debuts, the potential and what we saw of the big crowd as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't matter kind of what we say, right? It's how the fans feel. And I talked, again, mostly because I interacted with Charlotte FC fans at the Charlotte FC event, but then we're Atlanta fans there. And I was trying to ask both sides of, like, hey, like, is this your rival? And on Charlotte, like, they kept pointing to, like, you know, like, we have more juice with Orlando because of the playoff series. And that's kind of the thing, is that these two teams haven't played those games of consequence. Right. And it wasn't as much a natural rivalry like LA Galaxy, LAFC. Red Bulls, NYCFC. There didn't need to be games of consequence. There didn't need to be moments to build that rivalry because it was just obvious, right? And I still think Charlotte, Atlanta is obvious, and the cities themselves can feel that. But in MLS, to the Charlotte FC fans, to Atlanta United fans probably still look at like the Red Bulls from going head-to-head for those early years in their existence. And then, quite frankly, they just haven't been that good since then. So I think both sides needed more games like this. I do think that Saturday was a game of consequence. It was a big one. It was both teams coming in with high expectations, high stars on the field, a lot of money spent. And again, like both teams think that they're going to be two of the best in the East, in the league. And that's how you build these rivalries. So I think that was a good start. And we'll see what the return game shows. And maybe if they find themselves in the playoffs or another knockout competition together.
Yeah, I like that you call it game of consequence and not just playoffs. Because these games of consequence that happen in these other rivalries, many of them were regular season games, but you had stakes because Red Bulls were a perennial Supporters Shield winner, and then NYCFC comes on the block. You get the Red Wedding, but then NYCFC pushes for MLS Cup. And then on the flip side, LAFC being a Shield contender basically day one, but really 2 years in. And the Galaxy's history, and it was a little bit of a different time. But like those, I think, led to those. And Atlanta being bad, I think, has made that a little harder for it to jumpstart. And now you get both teams heavily investing. The fight around Miguel Almiron, I think, helps a little of like, I assume Atlanta fans were annoyed about hearing his name connected to that team for a year. And then the flip side is you get him, but then they get Zaha and everyone's got their new toys that they're excited to put on display. And that's what this game was. Tom, it was the first time we saw Zaha in MLS because of the birth of his child, missing week one. And then you get to see Latte Loth and Almiron out on the field. Zaha gets the goal, gets the assist. Did he end up getting credited with the assist fully?
Yes. And when it was announced in the press box, I turned to comm staffer of Charlotte and I gave him an eye and I was like, do you guys do this? Who is the official statistician here? And he put his hands out. He's like, I don't know. So he is still officially listed with the assists. I will credit to Wilfried Zaha. First of all, a couple things after the game before we even get back on the field. He's a superstar. He was on superstar time, brother. He did not come out for the avail. One, he deserves that. You're a star. You get to go on your own time. Two, credit to him for coming out and talking. Not everybody does, so that was really cool. But three, he did the star thing where he was like, no, I meant to shoot it, but so when I kicked it, he kicked me. He was like, it was still an assist. I still kicked it to him. Right. And I was like, I don't know about that, but I respect it.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we're cooking those books. Let's get everyone assists. Let's get everyone goals. We'll make sure to check my Golden Boot team and get those players' goals first. Notice, since Doyle has drafted Patrick Agyemang, he has not scored a goal, which is tough for all of us. So maybe I'll try and figure out a way to trade him off that roster and get him into a more comfortable, safe place. Danny Higginbotham said this during the broadcast. I had to go look it up because I didn't believe it. He said Wilfried Zaha, did you hear this?
No.
He said Wilfried Zaha was one of the most fouled players in the history of the Premier League. I went and looked it up. He is the most fouled player. And it's like by a huge margin.
Is he really?
I don't understand fully maybe how that statistic is. Like maybe not everyone does record it the same way, which wouldn't make sense because it's probably Opta or someone who's pulling that data. He's like 150. The next person was like 670s, and then no one else was really close. And I think Bukayo Saka will be the one to pass him because he's already like pushing up the list. But it's wild to think he hasn't been in the league for such a long time. And like while he did play a bulk of his career there, he is still fairly young. Like he did not play there for 15 years. And I know the league is new and all of that, but you would have assumed in the last 25 years that there was other players who played in the Premier League long enough and got fouled often enough to be on the top of that list. But as you said, Zaha's a superstar.
Well, you know why? It's because they didn't count fouls in the old day, back before the game was gone, mate. They just rubbed some dirt on it, got up, took their red card, took their punch to the face, and limped back to the locker room and had a cigarette and a couple beers.
That's absolutely true. Just go big, little up top, stopper, sweeper.
Tall and small.
Yeah, exactly. Stopper, sweeper. Emil Heskey wouldn't call that a foul.
No way. No way, mate.
Before the game was gone, and now, as you said, it officially is. It was a big result for Charlotte. We were talking in our group chat, and I sort of said similar in the recap, and I know Doyle has written similar as well. It was not an un-Charlotte-like performance. So it showed the potential, which is maybe last year that's a tie. Maybe it's a 1-0 win. Maybe it's a 1-1. Zaha gets you the 2 goals, but it's not a different style of dominating games yet under Dean Smith.
Correct. And I don't know if it's going to be that different, And I will say Dean Smith in his press conference when he was like, yeah, like as you were saying that, the first half wasn't necessarily great, or maybe Charlotte didn't really implant the game. Dean Smith kind of pushed back on that a few times, and he said, I think that just both teams did really, really well defensively to cancel each other out. And then Zaha said after the game he had a go at his teammates, which I have heard some stories about him having already done in preseason of like when the standard isn't high enough, he lets them know, and he lets them know very directly. And the way that he described it was constructive criticism. I was yelling, and I'm sure that was probably undersold it, but his whole thing was, we're not passing the ball quick enough. It's not crisp enough. By the time I get the ball, there's a defender on my back. Matt Edwards did awesome in the first half. Completely pocketed Wilfried Zaha. And then Zaha exploded for 10 minutes in the second half. This is what they needed. And I want to add, he didn't train all week. He was with his family. They'd just given birth. He flew back to Charlotte, no jet lag, and he's probably at 60% of what he could be, but in terms of even just fitness and freshness, rather than this was a X percentage of a top performance. So I think that's really encouraging. Like you said, Goss, last year that's a game that probably ends 0-0. It just is. So for them to get 3 points and for it to be Zaha on both, you can criticize maybe Guzan should have done better on the goal, or maybe the defenders could have done better on the first one, right? Doesn't matter. That's immaterial at the moment, because no matter what, this would be a game that this team were more likely to draw than to win. So that is the biggest and most important takeaway from it. Matt
Edwards, you mentioned the homegrown getting the opportunity to start in this one. Luis Abram getting the start on the back line as well. Basically all the fullbacks that you thought would be a part of this group are injured. Maybe that opens the door to the Julian Gressel move if there's question marks around how long these injuries last for, and you see a little bit of the fall off for this Atlanta team of you need players pushing out of those positions in possession to help create chances. They did not have that in this game. They looked much more toothless than they did in the first game. Now, of course, on the road in MLS, it's always going to be difficult. Over 50,000 fans in the building as well, Tom, makes it a pretty nice environment for Charlotte to play in.
That it does. And again, that was one of the biggest crowds in the league, if not the biggest. I guess I don't know off the top of my head. Probably the biggest. But even at that, it was kind of like some fans were like, year one, we had 70,000. Hey, if this, if that. The people around there were a little bit disappointed that it wasn't more, which just goes to show the growth.
I'm like, this is sick.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying too. I was like, this is awesome. I was talking to some of the supporters. It was my view was maybe more families would be able to go to this one because it's in the afternoon. And they're like, no. Youth soccer is in the late morning, early afternoon here. They're anecdotally, they were saying, there's so many people in my life that their kids have games when they can't go. So that's super encouraging.
It absolutely is. A good win for Charlotte to get their first victory of the season. So now they are sitting on 4 points If you listened to my weekend recap show, which you should not go back and listen to at this point if you haven't, because what we're about to do will be better anyway. I recorded it on Sunday. I mentioned that 2 weeks in, there are multiple clubs that have won both games they have played. So they sit on 6 points. They are perfect. Not undefeated, because there are other teams that have drawn and have not lost, but they are not perfect. I said there were 6, and there are only 5. I fell to the same problem that we all fall to, which is I got Messi obsessed. I got goat brains, and all of a sudden I added Inter Miami, even though they drew at home against NYCFC and were probably lucky to do so the first week of the season, because I was watching them without Messi maul the Houston Dynamo on my television while preparing for this. And so I added them in. So I would like to apologize to the many people who tweeted at me and got into my mentions to ask me how I did my math. One, always assume I just didn't. I make it up and I guess. I have no idea how to do math. And 2, just always assume I made a mistake. I don't know better than you, and I'm not figuring special things out behind the scenes. I am bad at math, and I am absent-minded. We have, for our perfect teams, the Philadelphia Union, who have been flying, Columbus Crew, LAFC, Vancouver. I should probably delete Miami from this list so I don't make that mistake again. God. Vancouver and San Jose Earthquakes. Did we hit that number right, Tom?
You hit 5. We did it.
How many Soccer-Wise hosts does it take to count to 5? We now know the answer is officially 2. Of those 5, the perfect 5, let's start with this question. Which are you most surprised by?
We're going to have time to talk about all 5 in some capacity, right?
Tom, we can do whatever you want.
All right, cool. So, but let me start with this. I think to power rank the level of surprise, and I'll start with least surprising.
Yes, we are power ranking surprise. Let's go.
LAFC, least surprising. Again, and they were probably the least convincing out of all of these 5 teams in their games. But, like, we know that they're very good. Columbus, given the opponents, given how institutionally really great they are, and Diego Rossi's still a star, I don't think we were talking enough about that, they'd be second least. The next 3 teams are different, varying levels of surprising. For me, Philly's probably the next one because I was high on them coming into the season.
Yes.
Vancouver, I just straight up wrong about. I was very pessimistic. That is misplaced. I'm sorry. And then so I think that the most surprising is San Jose Earthquakes. They were the worst team in MLS last year. They conceded more goals than any other team in the league. They conceded 1 over their 2 games. And yes, you could talk about the opponents. They got 2 CCC teams. Whatever, man. They won both of those games. Last year, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if a team played 48 hours prior. Nothing mattered. They were going to give up goals and probably lose. So what Bruce Arena did, and all of our critiques, I won't rope you into this, my critiques, I was saying, like, I love the idea of Chicho Arango and Joseph Martinez. I hope it happens. I don't think that they're going to play 3 at the back, and if they're not, they have no chance of making that work, and it's probably going to be tough. Well, they have been playing 3 at the back, or some variation of it, some lopsided formation where stay-at-home left back, with Ricketts playing as, like, more coming up the wing, and Espinoza as, you know, I guess technically a wing back in a back 3, but he's playing that like Parial did for Cincy. So, all of that random being said, San Jose is the most pleasant surprise of these 5 teams.
It's hard to disagree with you. I think if we went back 2 weeks and asked, like, okay, for putting odds on this, Vancouver would probably have lower odds because of like schedule. They were in CCC on top of.
Also true.
They played at Portland, and then they hosted the LA Galaxy, who at the time we didn't know would start the year by not knowing how to find the back of the net and all those issues and all that other stuff. Either way, those 2 are clearly, I think, in their own category on top of this. I have to put Philly a little closer as well because I didn't anticipate all of what they've done so far. But this San Jose team, as you said, they've been structured. They've been sound defensively, even with Hernan Lopez picking up like a pretty early red card in this last game. They're able to get 30 minutes on the road without conceding a goal to an SKC team that has many holes as they might have. Manu Garcia looks good. Like, they're going to create chances. They have Dejan Joveljic. Goal scoring isn't exactly what we think is the concern for SKC either. So to be able to, as you said, have that defensive base, Danielle looks back towards what he was. He probably doesn't finish top 3 keeper this year, but you are talking about someone who's in the top 10 conversation and probably ends up with plus on his XG post shots and probably ends up being a match winner overall for you more often than not, which was a huge part of their playoff run 2 years ago and a huge part of the fall off for them last season. So you add to that all of these attacking pieces coming into the team. And I sort of said it in the weekend recap that I did, but the goal specifically is exactly what San Jose wants, which is you're going to make mistakes because there is so much elite talent just being shoved down your throat down the middle. Of Lopez slides a pass into Joseph. Defenders are all over the place because it's Joseph Martinez on top of the 18. Like, this is the alarm bell, and Chicho Arango's just sniffing around. And the moment you make a mistake, he pops up, he takes advantage, and now they're playing from a 1-0 lead, and that's going to change the ability to defend. Right? The game's going to become easier for them if you have to come and chase them. And now San Jose in 2 weeks has been able to play from ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to be a sweet spot for them if they're not chasing the game. Right. Like, look, they're not going to win the Supporters Shield. Like, and in the chat, correctly to point about, hey, they're outperforming expected goals and stuff. Like, week 2 is too early to look at that. But yes, like, obviously they're not going to continue this on. They play Minnesota at home this weekend. I think 3 weeks ago we would have been like, oh, it's going to be an easy Minnesota win. And maybe it still will be. But San Jose, we need to recalibrate what we thought of them because, to your point, Goss, they're going to be sound, they're going to be hardworking, and they're going to be solid. And whether or not that's playoff good enough, I feel much better right now with 6 points in the bag because of how tight this is going to be. And particularly, like, let's say RSL. I had them kind of on the bubble there in the preseason of this like, you know, whatever, like 4th to 10th, I think is going to be really tight. RSL probably aren't closer to 4th or more so towards the 10th. So you get 3 points against a team like that. Like, these all count in the end, man. Like, how many playoff places are decided by a handful of points year over year? We see it all the time. So San Jose starting the season, you can't take away those 6 points. They're very clearly onto something. I'm not expecting it to be great all season long. I still would be leaning Minnesota this weekend, but very, very impressed by San Jose so far.
For Vancouver, coming out of last year, I was obviously high on them because I love Vancouver and I love everything about it. And I always want to be. And everything about the offseason was step back, step back, step back. It felt externally for a club that was saying just maintaining last year for us is going to be good because other teams are going to fluctuate. And then we're going to find little halfways to take small steps forward. And so for them to be here right now is massive. Because not only have they not taken a step back, but there actually is a path forward for them to be better than they were. And then you get a coach becoming more familiar with the group and the league. You potentially might get more signings or ads coming in to replace some of the big pieces they lost, mainly being Stuart Armstrong. But at a minimum right now, I think they are who they were last year, which is a really high floor. They have a clear style of play. It works at home. So they're going to get a ton of results to be in a playoff race because they're going to pick up home points, which is what you need to do in this league. And so to start here, Tom, feels big for them.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, like, I'll eat crow right now. Like, I was too pessimistic on this team. And Jaden Nelson has been awesome to start the season. Pedro Vite is contributing more in the final third. Like, he's a player I've liked a lot for a while, but last year I was disappointed that we didn't see more.
It sounded like Christopher Walken. But last Sorry.
I know you're good. Anytime you want to get at a Christopher Walken joke, I mean, don't ever apologize. But I wasn't, like, I was disappointed. Like, I thought so much from him that I thought if he was going to take a jump, it was going to be last year. Maybe it's this year. He started off very, very well. Yeah. Brian White, man, New Jersey Mario Gomez. He's the man. He's the dude. And this defense is untouched from what they were last year, which is at times elite. It was a little inconsistent. And so a coaching change, maybe that makes it more consistent.
Yep.
Again, like, it is silly to, like, we're going to look back on the show, particularly these 5 teams that we're talking about, and we're obviously going to be positive because we should be. They've earned that.
Yeah.
But early season, what's a data point and what's a red herring?
We are drinking the Kool-Aid today.
But as we should, they've earned this. Yeah. And particularly
there's not even a label on this Kool-Aid. It's just like the thing that comes in a little plastic fake-looking jug in the back of the bodega. There is dust all over this thing, and I'm drinking 7 of them.
I need you to, by the end of this Caps discussion, be on the record and say that they're going to beat Monterrey. That's what I need you to do. I'm not going to get there.
I'm not going
to get there.
I'm already there. It's not even a question. Here's a few things that pop up thinking about them. One, Sam Adekugbe injured early in this game. Eder Ocampo, who was brought in as like the 8th try at a U22 attacking piece that becomes elite. Played pretty well in his spot. There is a mistake in Tristan Blackman. Like, there's no way of avoiding it at this point in his career. And a lot of people know that. He has elite qualities. He's an elite athlete. There are times when he's on the ball where he looks like one of the best players in the league. If it was consistent, I don't even know if he'd play in MLS anymore. Like, that's how good the other stuff is. The mistake on the goal is I think he thinks he's going to shield it and then realizes he's too far from the end line and sort of stumbles and falls. And it's like, it feels silly to blame someone for falling, except there's enough of these now over the course of his career that's one of the problems. And I do wonder if Sam Adekugbe at center back ends up being an option, or if Ocampo plays well enough, Laborda as a full-time starting center back becomes an option. But we're talking about changes and half chances. Overall, they fit in well under a new coach. They're pressing high. The game opened up exactly how they wanted to against the LA Galaxy, and they played transitional. Jaden Nelson looks awesome in all that setup. And so they've hit the ground running this season. And yes, they will be victorious over the highest spending team in the region. They will move on in CONCACAF Champions Cup, which we'll talk about coming up from here. You had the Philadelphia Union third. I've already said my mea culpas like 5 times. But let's give you a chance to sort of celebrate on this one. You were excited about what they'd be under Bradley Carnell, and they've hit it.
Yeah, so again, like I still, it's going to need a lot more of positive performances and results for me to change my mind to move them kind of up another tier in the East. I think they're a playoff team, and I think they're kind of just that. I don't think that they have the top end potential or top end ceiling to really challenge above that. And hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I will say the floor of what this team is going to be, I think it's going to be very, very high. And they're not going to score 4 goals a game. Don't want to break anybody's heart. But the way that they're playing is sustainable. Whether ball goes in every single time they shoot on target is a different story. But dude, beating Cincy like they did this weekend, that's a real result. Like, that's the performances, and I like the 4-2-2. I like what Quinn Sullivan is doing more and more in the attack. I think that there's room to grow a little bit with, Indy Vassilev. And as long as Andre Blake stays fit, this is going to be a really solid team.
Yeah, the pieces up the spine have hit fast. Danley, obviously, we saw last year, but to bring in another center back and another center mid and have them hit this quickly, like, it's the right game states for them, which is they've gotten ahead. Not against Orlando early, but they were able to get the 2 goals quickly. They got ahead against Cincinnati, but they didn't concede a single half chance going into the second goal. Like, that's that perfect 35 or so minutes for them to play. If they can do that stuff, I think enough of the goals will be there. Yeah, Ty Baribo maybe shouldn't look off passes and then get lucky to get tap-ins on the far post as often as he is. But like,
I like that.
But you love it. All of those chances are there. Like, all of those chances will be there. They were there last year for this Philadelphia team. I think there's enough attacking talent, and I think the system will make enough sense as long as defensively the base is strong. And I think that's what's been really promising for me on top of Quinn Sullivan's play, which I know you noted on social, and I talked about it last week. And shout out to our very own Morgan Tenza, who was texting me about it week 1, or I think in preseason maybe. And we're all excited to see him do his thing. And I think he's fit in really cleanly. And so that's exciting to see for this team, because they need some academy pieces to hit. And the idea with Carnell is to play more kids, but like, they're not going to perform yet. And so to have Quinn Sullivan in this gap in between, and Nathan Harriel when he comes back, like, those need to be the ones who are key parts of your best 11.
Did somebody draft Ty Baribo in the Golden Boot draft?
Did you?
I don't know. Do we have to look it up? I think he's on Team Tom and Kalen, but I can't be totally sure.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I was winning after week 1, so I haven't checked back. I haven't had time this week to check to make sure that I'm still up there. I know everyone's been waiting on pins and needles in the Discord, because I did send last week that obviously I took Tom down in fantasy basketball pretty easily. Update.
We still have a league.
I dominated Doyle as well this week. So I will be sending the exact scores into the Discord as usual, and I know everyone's clamoring for it. So I just wanted to like put at ease some of the hearts for some people who feel like they haven't gotten there quick enough. That gets us into our final 2 undefeated teams. You said the 2 that were least surprising. LAFC, I think, was, or no, Columbus was the 4th team that you said. Now, I think it's fair to say this now. I think 2 weeks ago we would have said, oh no Cucho. We're so excited for Chicago, week 1 at least. And then now you get the Revs, which will be a conversation we'll have in a little bit as well. But clearly the excitement with Columbus is just that without Cucho, it just all looks similar. And Wilfried Nance's just pure ability to make people believe in themselves remains.
Yeah, and look, the attack is still thin. They still need to bring players in, but as long as Rossi, Campos, and Jason Russell, probably, I mean, Rossi the most important because he's the best player in that trio, but they don't really have a center forward that they can turn to if Jason Russell goes down again, like a senior player, right? You can bring in youth players, and hey, maybe Chase Adams, that'll be his chance if something like that happens, but at some point you're going to need another center forward. But with this 11 on the field, I don't think that you and I were doubting that they would be really good as long as all 11 were there. Probably the top end stuff because how hard it is to replace Cucho. But like we've been super positive on Jason Russell. We've been super positive on Diego Rossi and everybody else in this team. So in a macro sense, like, yeah, 2 good performances, 2 wins isn't shocking. But this is still like not going to do revisionist history. I was down on them coming into the season. Like I still thought that they'd kind of be there at the end. But I thought that they have more work to do. And they do still have more work to do. But once again, you can't take these 6 points away. And this reinforces, and probably I overlooked a little bit about the Wilfried Nance system, the Wilfried Nance beliefs, the Wilfried Nance tactics, everything else. And Diego Rossi getting to be the guy again. And what I really like about him is he'll fit in next to a Cucho Hernandez. He'll fit in next to a Carlos Vela. If Carlos Vela's hurt, okay, I can go win the Golden Boot. No Cucho, no Ramirez. All right, I'm the guy in the attack. I'll score a couple goals.
Yeah, I think I drafted Diego Rossi in the Golden Boot race, and this is not me doing a flex. I'm actually trying to remember, but I drafted him in saying, like, in that moment, he was technically the best attacking player on that team, and like I straight up the reason I'm good at fantasy basketball is I normally try and pick the best player on worst teams because like every team's going to score 97 points and get
stats,
X amount of rebounds. That was more my thought process with Diego Rossi than I think Diego Rossi can be the best attacking piece or best player on a genuinely competitive team. I didn't think that. I'm not sure that I even still do, but it's exciting to see him perform in this way because if you go back to LAFC, which obviously he was young, he won the Golden Boot in a year they didn't make the playoffs. Like it was COVID. It was a weird year. So yeah, for sure. But like he could be the best player every once in a while, but it wasn't the things that the top tier of attackers do. And so he looked like maybe the best second option in Major League Soccer, which is an awesome place to sit. Now he's being asked to be the first. And a lot of that goes to Nance's system, right? Chambos has stepped up. The way Mo Farsi has played with Arfston, both of them have stepped up. And the confidence they all have has led them to grow as players. And I think Farsi now, you look at a guy 2+ years into doing this, just has pure belief in what he can do on the field and how he can affect the game. And so all of those things continue to sort of push this Columbus group forward, and a pretty good set of matchups as well, which takes us to LAFC, which, as you said, were the least surprising team to get here. Also because they played at home their first 2 games, which is a nice little setup. Mm-hmm. But it has been underwhelming. I said it last week, and I think we were challenged at one point on the show where I think it was with Joe on Thursday, where I was talking about Minnesota, and they were like, well, you guys were like, well, you don't think well of this. And it's like, well, I don't think great of LAFC right now. Yeah. To lose 1-0 to LAFC is kind of standard base. And it was another game like that for them where you see some flashes in the attack, but it's just not consistent from them. And it probably never will be, except for those moments when Bouanga is taking over.
Yes. I would push back to say Cengiz Ünder is this is a Turkey international with 51 caps, I think. He was sold to Fenerbahce for I forget if it was to Fenerbahce or to Roma, but whichever it was he's like a $25 million player. That's a significant piece to be missing. So I think that there's more to come. I think that we can see more creativity from the team. And then, yeah, like they're in the CONCACAF Champions Cup too. They've had that fixture congestion, and then they've won both of these games. And yeah, like maybe to your point, it's not going to be as open or as entertaining or as free-flowing or as whatever that we want, but we just have to accept that this is a really strong defensive team, a really structured team that has special players in the attack that will make the difference.
Yeah. It's a good point. They've scored 4 goals in 4 games. That's who they've been so far, but there is a huge name to come into this as like straight up a hurricane gets blown into my face right now here.
Was that me? Was that your code for me just talking?
No, that's my code for the like ominous sky that is blowing into my face right now in Miami. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum before we get into LAFC's matchup against Columbus Crew, because those two teams just happen to find each other over and over again with the three teams that have yet to score in MLS. That is the New England Revolution, Nashville, and St. Louis. It is easy that two of them played each other the first week. So Nashville facing off at home against the Revs to start. Then the Revs faced off at home against Columbus this weekend. Snow, I think, a little bit before the game, so not ideal conditions in that 1-0 loss. Which of these teams are you most worried about, or which are you most surprised? Let's do that one. Which are you most surprised is here right now?
So of these two teams, or of the three? I'm not. So you can make cases for all three of these teams. I think I'm most surprised at St. Louis, but that doesn't take away my surprise for the other two teams, because St. Louis they play the high pressing style. I thought that they were going to dial that up again as well. They have three attackers that I really like, led by Marcel Hardo and Cedric Teuchert, and Simon Betcher is starting. And whether it's Simon Betcher or Joao Klaus, like I'm comfortable with that with those other two players, and they just haven't looked great. Like, they haven't done much. They haven't scored a goal, 2 draws at least, so they haven't conceded a goal. That's kind of where you point to. But again, I'm disappointed for all three of these, or I guess surprised, because of the attacking talent at all of these teams. But I think I'd lean St. Louis. What about you guys?
I would lean St. Louis as well. 1, because they had Rapids coming off CCC at home week 1. 2, because I would have guessed that San Diego would give up goals week 2. Like, if you asked me this question before the season started, because I didn't think San Diego would be this controlled. And like you talked about, the big ads for this team happened last year, and we saw it in MLS. So in the whole who hits the ground running, like, I wouldn't take the Revs, because the Revs, I already knew we're putting together a new roster on the fly. Nashville as well. Most of the pieces that sit underneath the two DPs are all new in central midfield for sure, and those two attacking roles, whatever you want to call them, behind the two center forwards. So, like, St. Louis was the one where you're like, this was built to hit the ground running. That's the point. I'm not unhappy about it, but I'm surprised that Simon Betcher has gotten the shot at the role just because of the spot Joao Klaus holds in that team, and, you know, on the salary cap and all of that. And obviously Teuchert clearly not ready to go from the start week 1. So that puts them a little bit behind things, but they were easily taken out of the game by San Diego in week 2. So in week 1 against the Rapids, I thought they created some chances. I thought you saw the ideas from them. Week 2, San Diego looked good, but, like, it's on St. Louis to be able to push that game and create opportunities. And right now, they are not getting out into transition moments. They're not being able to press teams into mistakes, and there's not a ton in possession. And that's what Hartle was supposed to fix, and that's what Teuchert is supposed to help fix, and that we haven't seen yet. And I think that's a little bit unfortunate for a group that one of the big reasons I thought they were a playoff team this year was because they were bringing so much back that had been built up over the second half of last season.
Exactly. Like, you were expecting them to hit the ground running again, even with a new coach like that. We should allow for that. But as you said, most of their key signings were here in the summer, and not just in theory. Hardo and particularly Teuchert looked really good. Simon Betcher looked really good at the end of last season. So I thought it was going to be pretty seamless, and we know how this team wants to play. Every coach is going to see the game a little bit differently, but generally speaking, it's not like Olaf Melberg was going to turn them into a possession-based, possession-based team that is going to play slow. Like, they're going to play a similar way. I think that he's going to be more defensive, and I think that's pretty clear. I know from talking to people during preseason, that was the focus, but that's not abnormal for a new coach. New coach comes in, get the structure right, get the defending right, then we figure out the attack. Like, that's normal too. So I'm not worried about them yet, but this is not the way that they would have wanted to start. But I mean, as for the other, like, and probably that, I just think that this is the best team out of these three clubs. Like, I think that they're going to finish ahead of New England and Nashville in the Supporters' Shield race.
Yep.
Whatever. I just have more points. None of these teams are going to be in the Shield race. My point is that they're in different conferences.
That battle between 18 and 19 in the Supporters' Shield race is going to be hot and heavy. I will say I like a lot of what I'm seeing from Nashville. they are one piece short right now in the attack. Hani still has to drop in and do everything to set up the Hani spot at center forward. Like Serge's not touching the ball because Hani has to go get it and has to create chances. A lot of it's down that right channel where he's trying to find some space. That's what it was against the Red Bulls. And there's not enough other focus for defenses to have to go for Hani to either stay high or if he drops in to have someone else run in front of him. Like I would be fine if this team went and got a second forward to run alongside Serge and say Hani's full-time job is that underneath attacking role alongside Taxeth or whoever it is. And that's like the spot he plays for this team. And he might not put up the same numbers. He will have the same effect that he had 2 years ago when he was an MVP finalist or the other way around. I can't get away from this clearly to me being the Julian Gressel team. I know that that's not exactly clearly what he's asked for. And that's where I think a lot of the Atlanta rumors come from and the familiarity. And I don't know salary cap structure for Nashville if it works, but like imagine him in that underneath spot being able to play off of a Hani spinning his man and running into the space or Serge coming deeper to connect. And then when he floats out wide, he's serving crosses in to Sam Serge. Like it seems like a really good fit for them, but I like enough of what I see from Nashville that I'm not super worried about them. And the Revs, it's early. Like it was going to be tough anyway. Campagna's had some huge chances blocked off the line. Like the XG is not horrendous for them. As you said, it's early to totally go on that. But this is a club, when we talked to Seth McComber preseason, where it was like, there's not a lot of leeway for them to say, oh, just keep waiting, right? The weeks start to rack up for a club that flipped the whole roster to say, these are now our players.
Yes. But I still think that I have more stock in New England than Nashville. I don't think either are going to be particularly great, but I think that the high end for New England is higher than what the high end could be for Nashville. So again, and we're probably splitting hairs here, but I think that just goes back to my disappointment with Nashville. My questions about them were about the center back pairing, not either one of their profiles, but it's not easy to adapt to MLS as a center back. And how many Max Tam-ish center backs have we seen just complete swings and misses in the league? So that was where my focus was, because I looked at Campana and I'm saying, if he gets chances, he's going to score goals. And they're going to create chances because they have these attackers. I was impressed by my initial impressions of Ganago that, like, it's disappointing that they haven't scored yet. And yes, like you said, like there have been some close moments. And look, it's a 2-game sample size. I think the attack is going to be fine.
Yeah.
But, like, still, the way that you start the season, and these points all matter, particularly for a team that, again, like, probably going to be on the playoff bubble, whether they make the playoffs or not. Like, it is more likely they fall away from the playoff race rather than that they go past the playoff line and don't have to worry at the end of the season or just playing for seeding. Like, I think every point is going to matter. So, yes, it's a lot of new players, but this, like, Caleb Porter, to his credit, keeps coming on saying, this is my team. Like, no excuses, whatever, right? So, it's got to happen soon. It's got to happen soon because last year was disastrous. If we're having this conversation in 3 weeks, he's on the hot seat. He is.
Yeah. Let's move into CCC action as Tom boils up with a little bit of that CCL fever. Before we get into it, let's talk about a team that was eliminated, because we do have a question from Jay Scarduno in the chat, who was kind enough to contribute via Super Chats. So we're going to read this off, which is, what are the names RSL looking for as a DP striker? Do you have any ideas for RSL, and if there's anything real there, or is it, let me ask you this, is it still the expectation that they get it done before we go out into the summer window situation?
I think that the expectation is that they are going to get somebody in before the end of the primary transfer window. I wouldn't guarantee that's going to be a designated player because, again, it depends on target. Like, again, I've reported that one of the players they called for was Taniolo Isei. I think we'd all agree, like, again, this is all hypothetical because Minnesota aren't trading him. But I think we could all agree that would be a really good signing. And I think he'd fit this team very well. But he's not a DP. So, like, I don't want to say just because it's not a designated player means it's a disappointment. But I'm not sure is a long-winded way of answering this question. But I do feel strong that they're still going to bring somebody in before the end of the window.
Let's move into our CCC action, and we have to start here. We mentioned last week the investigation into the actions in the Colorado Rapids LAFC match. So it was a investigation after Chidozie Owazium said that there was inappropriate racist language used by Sergi Palencia of LAFC. And CONCACAF has come out with its findings saying, while the evidence confirms that the interaction between Palencia and Owazium involved inappropriate language, it is clear to the committee that the word reported by the Colorado Rapids in its official position to CONCACAF was not used. So there is no punishment or suspension for Sergi Palencia off the back of that. He will be available now for their match going forward against the Colorado Rapids. That's the official language from CONCACAF. So now we go into this week where we have now the big MLS teams that were on buys from last year entering the competition. And of course, as I said, now we get into the Liga MX MLS one-on-one matchups. So across the board, we've got LAFC against the Crew, Inter Miami playing Cavalier of Jamaica, Vancouver against Monterrey, the Seattle Sounders against Cruz Azul, FC Cincinnati against Tigres, and the LA Galaxy facing off against Herediano because of RSL falling to Herediano in the previous rounds. If you had to pick, how many MLS teams do you think we see in the following round?
It's a good question. So we know we're getting one from Columbus LAFC, so that's one. I feel pretty confident Miami over Cavalier, though I do appreciate the fact that Cavalier were the seeded team in this bracket just because of the tournament they won. Respect. So that's why they have the second leg. You never know what can happen when you go down to Jamaica. So I think that that's two right there. I don't see it for Vancouver versus Monterrey because of how big of a club Monterrey is. I wouldn't rule them out. So I'm sticking with two there. Galaxy over Herediano. Dude, I'm taking Cincy over Tigres. I'm in. I'm all the way in. What does that make, 4?
I think that makes 5.
I forgot to keep counting. I apologize. 1, 2, 3. No, that's 4.
Oh, sorry. And then Seattle Cruz Azul is the last one.
Yeah. I think that goes either way, well and truly. You know what? I think Seattle built for this. I'll take them too. Let me just say this out loud before you even respond, because you should be telling me I'm a moron to be assuming that Cincy and Seattle are going to beat Tigres and Cruz Azul. Never in the history, essentially, of this tournament have those kind of results happened. Yeah. While, it is more likely in the past that Herediano beats the Galaxy rather than, Cincy and Seattle beating Tigres or Cruz Azul. We would be happy to get past Herediano and just be like, oh, Tigres, they're the Giants. We get it. It's difficult. But, I truly believe, particularly those last two, and I will say the Galaxy are vulnerable too, but I feel really good about Cincy in this matchup.
That one is the toughest one just because I'm not sure where on Cincy's scale they're at right now. When you look at the Red Bull game, and how much is that having played CCC? Sorry, not the Red Bull game. When you look at the Philadelphia game, having played CCC, having the focus on this, but I still am sort of wondering, Evander didn't train preseason with this group, or Jano has not fully been there, Matt Miazga's not back. Not questioning that their ceiling and this group's ceiling can win this matchup, but that how close they are right now. I think that's the concern for this club, where Seattle, I think, are a little bit closer in my mind, even with the result against RSL. And Cruz Azul, I think, are a little bit further down and more attainable. So I would take Seattle more than I would take Cincinnati. I would say 4 teams, plus, of course, Vancouver as a golden ticket. They're the one I'm fully guaranteeing over Monterrey, and then the other ones are maybe. I think there's a bigger chance that both LAFC and Columbus lose to each other and no MLS team goes through there than that Vancouver doesn't go through against a club like Monterrey in this one. It is, I think, one of the most fun parts of the year. For whatever Leagues Cup tries to be and has attempted to be and whatever, this is the juice. This is the MLS First Liga MX opportunity to test yourselves. The time of the year sucks, the setup sucks, but the atmospheres are on point, and it's going to be some massive games. And there is not really a super clear path for an MLS team to get this done without facing one of the big teams in Mexico. The clearest one would be the winner of LAFC Columbus will play the winner of Inter Miami Cavalier, and then Vancouver, Monterrey, Pumas, and Alajuelense are the 4 other teams on that side of the bracket Seattle, if they were to get through against Cruz Azul, they'd play the winner of the derby between Chivas and America. And then Cincinnati, of course, facing off against Tigres right now. So if they win, they would play the winner of Galaxy Herediano and then whatever's coming from that other side of the bracket. Or if Cincy loses, the Galaxy, if they were able to win, would face off against Tigres. So it is not straightforward anyway, Tom. It does not set up right now, I think, in a year in which you're like, this is the year for one of these teams to get it done, especially with the way a lot of these teams are coming into this moment.
Yeah, but I would go back to what you said. So the winner of Columbus, LAFC, and Miami, like one of those three teams gets to a semifinal without having to play a Liga MX team. And unless, look, if Monterrey upset the mighty Vancouver Whitecaps, then that is the first time that they, or Pumas as well, in the semifinal. Like, but you look on that side of the bracket, Monterrey is that team. So let's just say it's Miami Monterrey in a semifinal. I think, like, if you're putting on the MLS logo and looking at the bracket, be content. If that's one of the semifinalists, I'm totally good there, right? And then you hope that it's Seattle or Cincy or LA as one of the teams in the semifinal on the other side, and then you say you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If Cucho was still in Columbus, I'd feel differently about this, right?
Yeah.
That would be a situation which then I'm looking at all those three MLS teams in the best part of the bracket, and you're saying, like, whichever one gets out is a genuine contender to win this whole thing. And so having that team taking that half step back makes me a little bit more questionable. And then Miami, they're just a box of unknown. Like, I don't know. I don't know when Messi's available. Now, they just put up 4 on the Houston Dynamo without him. Maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe that's reading too much into some of that stuff. But I think that would be the big worry with that group. And then on the other side, as I said, Cincinnati not starting the year exactly where they want to be. Seattle have not hit the ground running the way I thought they would. And the Galaxy are not the team that finished last year. Like, if you had Ricky available for this, if you had been able to keep a little bit more maybe of that midfield intact coming into this year, okay, fine. But if you get into a situation where you're playing a high leverage game, whether it's against Herediano or against Tigres, and you don't have Ricky and you don't have Payne still, then you're in a really tough spot at this stage of the competition. And so I'm not sure that I see an obvious team or an obvious way for an MLS team to break through on this one. Either way, we're going to continue watching it. It's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to be in the Discord throughout the games over the course of this week. We will come back on Thursday, myself and Tom. I think we're going to do an early show on Thursday morning to help preview the weekend of MLS action and react to what we've seen in CCC. We have a huge NWSL season preview that we're going to drop tomorrow morning. We had 2 of the best analysts in NWSL, and Lori Lindsay and Jill Lloyden, join myself and Jordan, and we hit every single team. We already have an interview for the NWSL Challenge Cup that's going to be coming out later this week. Aubrey Kingsbury joining us from the Washington Spirit to get ready for that game, as the season is just around the corner there. And as I said, we're going to cover everything CCC and MLS here at Soccerwise. So thank you to all of you out there for watching live. Thank you to all of you for listening. Thank you to you, Tom, once again. And we'll talk to you all again very, very soon.